There are many who begin Beelzebub's tales to his grandson, but of those who begin, very few finish and get through the whole text, and that's for a number of reasons. If you're familiar with the writing and the style of the book, you will know why. And in this video, I want to share some ways to approach the text from Gurdjieff himself. Of course, there is a lot said about the way it's written, and many warnings in the first chapter, the arousing of thought in Beelzebub's tales to his grandson, but also in this text, transcripts of Gurdjieff's wartime meetings that we are working through currently on the channel. There is also some advice in that text, and so I'm going to bring a few quotes from the transcripts of Gurdjieff's wartime meetings, some quotes from the first and second chapter, the arousing of thought, and why Beelzebub was in our solar system. And hopefully, as I package all of that up together, maybe you're on your first or second or third full start trying to tackle Beelzebub's tales to his grandson. And hopefully, if you watch this video, you'll be in a better position to tackle this very difficult text. So let's go. And so we're going to begin from a couple of answers that Gurdjieff gives in his transcripts of the wartime meetings. This comes from meeting 25, and the questioner asks, "What must one do to follow the advice you give in your book, to persuade all the matters, all the unconscious parts of one's presence, to work as if they were conscious, and so on?" Gurdjieff answers, "It is not my book, it is Mr. Beelzebub's, and it is advice which he is giving to his grandson." "Then it is only for his grandson?" Gurdjieff, "Beelzebub will explain it to you. As for me, I give you another piece of advice. Get accustomed to calling Beelzebub my dear grandfather. That will help you. The condition is that you address him respectfully, my dear grandfather, with all the details. Then perhaps he will answer." And this first piece of advice is around approaching the text and the character of Beelzebub reverently, with respect. And if you have worked through it, you can actually listen here on the channel. If you didn't know, we've read through it last year. And throughout our reading of Beelzebub's tales, I would often comment that Beelzebub is speaking to us directly because of how it's written, with Hussein and him saying, "my dear boy," and listen, and this is important. All of these sort of ways he begins his dialogue with Hussein, his grandson. If we approach the book with reverence, and anytime we reference Beelzebub, we call him my dear grandfather, then when he's talking to his grandchild, in essence, he's talking to us. And now this next quote comes from meeting 16, and it is about all of the wonders and magic that are contained within Beelzebub's tales. "For example, in Beelzebub, I know there is everything one must know. It is a very interesting book. Everything is there. All that exists, all that has existed, all that can exist. The beginning, the end, all the secrets of the creation of the world. All is there. But one must understand, and to understand depends on one's individuality. The more man has been instructed in a certain way, the more he can see. Subjectively, everyone is able to understand according to the level he occupies, for it is an objective book, and everyone should understand something in it. One person understands one part, another 1,000 times more. Now, find a way to put your attention on understanding all of Beelzebub. This will be your task, and it is a good way to fix a real attention. If you can put real attention on Beelzebub, you can have a real attention in life. You didn't know this secret. In Beelzebub, there is everything. I have said it, even how to make an omelette. Among other things, it is explained. And at the same time, there isn't a word in Beelzebub about cooking. So you put your attention on Beelzebub, another attention than that to which you are accustomed, and you will be able to have the same attention in life. And so many people find the text very difficult because they're used to Ouspensky and some of the other writers that have written about Gurdjieff and his ideas, which speaks directly to the intellect. The intellect enjoys it. It can vibe with the words and the linear fashion of those words, and everything makes sense. Whereas with Beelzebub's tales, I think Gurdjieff is speaking more to the emotional center, to essence. And as he says there, to answer this question, that if we give a special attention to the text, we can then bring that attention to things occurring in real life. It's not about just working through the text, just reading it. It's about forming a relationship with it. In the beginning, before even the introduction, Gurdjieff says that one should read the book 3 times. The first time as one is accustomed to read a newspaper, the second time out loud, as I would have done on our journey through it on the channel, and only on the third reading should we try to understand and take some of the deeper meanings of the text. And one of my teachers in the group that I was in, she was an older lady, and she would say that that's all she would read. Later in her life, she's obviously been in the Gurdjieff work for many years, and the only book that she would read is Beelzebub's Tales. And so that's not what I'm advising for you, unless you want to form a very strong bond with the text. But again, address and approach Beelzebub's Tales with reverence and the figure and character of Beelzebub, as address him as my dear grandfather, and bring a certain attention to our reading, so then we can take that out into life also. And now these next 2 quotes, or even 3 quotes, come from the text itself. The first 2 are from the first chapter, The Arousing of Thought, and the second one is from Why Beelzebub Was in Our Solar System. And this is the first quote I want to share with you from The Arousing of Thought. But in the event that, notwithstanding this warning of mine, you should nevertheless wish to become acquainted with the further contents of my expositions, then there is already nothing else left for me to do but to wish you with all my genuine soul a very, very good appetite, and that you may digest all that you read, not only for your own health, but for the health of all those near you. And this comes about the first third or half of the way through the Arousing of Thought, and the first 10 pages or so is Gurdjieff warning. It's a word of warning. He says this isn't a normal book. It's not in line with the bon ton literature. It's not written in ordinary language. And so it's a very direct warning. And he goes on to say now in this passage that I've just shared, well, if you're not going to listen and you're going to read on, then I hope with all my genuine soul that you have a very good appetite and that you digest all that you read. Meaning, you might have to chew over certain passages again and again. Sometimes you might get indigestion. You're unable to digest and process the text. But if your appetite's good, then maybe in time you'll be able to digest it. And the next quote from The Arousing of Thought is as follows. I decided to do this without fail, so that this initial chapter of mine, predetermined, as I have already said, to awaken your consciousness, should fully justify its purpose, and reaching not only your, in my opinion, as yet only fictitious consciousness, but also your real consciousness, that is to say, what you call your subconscious, might for the first time compel you to reflect actively. And if you didn't know, Gurdjieff was an expert hypnotist. There is a chapter in Beelzebub's Tales, Beelzebub as a professional hypnotist. Gurdjieff was a professional hypnotist as a younger man. And so, of course, he's very familiar with the concept of the subconscious, or the unconscious, maybe you might be more familiar with. But he's saying that hopefully that you receive the information with your fictitious consciousness, because, of course, if you're aware of the Gurdjieff work, Gurdjieff says that we don't have consciousness, we are asleep. But he says also that it may sink down into the subconscious. And throughout the text, there is a few passages where Beelzebub is saying, really, we want to try and invert the consciousnesses, that the subconscious becomes active and the consciousness becomes passive. But of course, that's maybe for another video. But he's saying that if you read it and go through it and process it, even if your consciousness isn't receiving the the words, if you're not gaining understanding, it's okay, because your subconscious is certainly receiving the information. And so that's that. It's all going on under the surface, if you like. You read it consciously, but your subconscious is receiving the information, especially if you follow the advice and read it 3 times. And this final quote is from the end of Why Beelzebub Was in Our Solar System, and it brings in the character of Hussein and Ahun, and it shows their reverence for Beelzebub, of which goes back to the first quote I shared as how we should have reverence, how they revere Beelzebub, their dear grandfather, and how we can learn from this also. On this big spaceship Karnak, the passengers included the kinsmen and attendants of Beelzebub and also many beings who served on the ship itself. During the period to which this tale of ours refers, all the passengers were occupied either with their duties or simply with the actualization of what is called active being mentation. Among all the passengers aboard the ship, one very handsome boy was conspicuous. He was always near Beelzebub himself. This was Hussein, the son of Beelzebub's favourite son, Tuluf. After his return from exile, Beelzebub had seen this grandson of his, Hussein, for the first time, and appreciating his good heart, and also owing to what is called family attraction, he took an instant liking to him. And as the time happened to coincide with the time when the reason of little Hussein needed to be developed, Beelzebub, having a great deal of free time there, himself undertook the education of his grandson, and from that time on took Hussein everywhere about with him. That is why Hussein also was accompanying Beelzebub on this long journey and was among the number around him. And Hussein, on his side, so loved his grandfather that he would not stir a step without him, and he eagerly absorbed everything his grandfather either said or taught. And that final sentence there brings us round full circle to the initial quote I said, that we should approach Beelzebub with reverence and call him our dear grandfather. And it is Hussein on his side so loved his grandfather that he would not stir a step without him, and he eagerly absorbed everything his grandfather either said or taught. And all that to say that even if you had a full start, 2 full starts, or 10 full starts, it doesn't matter. That's all in the past. All you can do is to maybe open it up once again. Maybe if you find it easier, we have also 2 commentaries on the channel, one by Orage and one by J.G. Bennett. Maybe it may be easier to come at it from that angle, receive the secondary commentary information first, and maybe when they mention a particular chapter or an aspect of a chapter, go and listen to that chapter. But ultimately, the goal is to get through the text, to take what you can from it, even if that is only a handful of passages, but with time, with determination, and with consistency, you can read the book, you can become familiar, and of course you can learn what Gurdjieff wanted to leave for his grandchildren through this amazing text, Beelzebub's Tales, to his grandson. Happy reading.